All right, so let's actually do one more cool thing with our auth context before we move on to the next topic. We're actually going to create a system to protect unauthenticated requests or unauthenticated users from accessing certain client-side routes. Basically, what we're saying is if a user's not logged in, they shouldn't be allowed to go to certain locations. And that's all we're really going to do, but we're going to leverage our auth context and our use auth context custom hook to make that happen. First, let's actually go ahead and update this auth context provider a little bit with a new variable called initialized and set initialized. And then we'll say use state false. Now, this initialized variable is simply storing whether or not we have actually requested or attempted to authenticate the user on application startup. Because technically when we start the application, we don't know if there's a user logged in or not. We have to go get the token and make a request. And then if the user's logged in, we get the data back and we set the user, otherwise we don't. So at the end of this fetch user function, we know, hey, by the way, the app should be initialized because we have tried to fetch the user. We also know, like, hey, if that didn't happen, also set initialized to true because that means no token was found, which means no users logged in. So, hey, guess what? The app is initialized, no one's logged in, work from there. And so that will help us get rid of that intermediate state where we haven't fetched the user and no users logged in. And you might actually see like flashes of that in the nav bar when the nav bar thinks that no user logged in, then it gets a user, then it updates its re-renders so that it displays the user and all that goodness. But this initialized variable should take care of that, at least for the time being. Then go ahead and create a new component here called protected route. Protected route.js. And then inside that component, we're going to put a few things here. We're going to import the use auth context custom hook from contexts auth, and we're going to import login from components. Oh yeah, let's I love that we can do that now from components. Great. Then we're going to export default a function that is the protected route, and it is going to accept a single prop, which is element, and that element prop is going to be a component that it is going to render. However, it will only render it under certain conditions. Those conditions will be determined by whatever is in the use auth context, and in particular, the user and the initialized state variables. Now, if the app is not initialized yet, if we haven't actually tried to check if a user exists, we just want to return null. It means like just return nothing until we know that a user exists. Otherwise, if it is initialized, and technically we don't have to do that because we know that'll be true if not initialized is true, but let's put it here just for posterity. And there is no user's name. The user does not have a username yet. Then we will return a login component with a message that says you must be logged in to access that page. Cool? So nothing crazy going on here. All we're doing is we're taking the user initialized variables from use auth context, and if the app has been initialized and we don't have a user, then we know there's no user logged in, and so any protected route should then be, instead of displaying the actual route itself, it'll just display the login page with a message that says, hey, you got to be logged in to access that page. Now, we haven't actually told the login page to show a message yet, have we? So we should probably go do that too. So in the login component, make sure it accepts a message prop, and then it takes that message prop and it says, hey, if there's an error, a form error or a message, then I want you to display the form error or the message, depending on which one exists. Otherwise, display nothing. So that should handle that for us. And then we should also probably export this protected route from our components index file here. So we should say export default as protected route from protected route, just like that. So then we can use it or import it the same way we import all our other components. Now, once we've done that, in the app.js component, let's go ahead and import it right there. So this protected route component is going to work almost identical to how this route component works in React router. See how the React router DOM route component accepts an element prop, and that's what it renders whenever this path is matched? Well, we're doing something similar here, except our protected route component renders the element only when a user is logged in. So let's actually protect this post detail component. So in here, in element, or right here, I'm going to create this protected route component, and it is going to accept an element prop, and that element prop I'm going to place this post detail component. Ta-da! So it's just nested inside a component which is nested inside. So I'm basically just taking the exact same pattern that's seen in these routes and using it to create a protected route. Now we could also wrap this route component here and do something similar like that, but this seems like it works well enough and it's simple enough to understand at least. And so now once we've actually done that, let's go ahead and navigate to the post detail component and try and log out. Or let's actually do it like this. Let's log out here. And once we're logged out, which it seems like we are, let's go ahead and click on this, and boom. Now we're on the correct route here, post 3, but instead of actually seeing the post detail page, we get redirected to the login page with a "you must be logged in to access that page" message. And that's what we want, right? So we are now able, if we wanted to add like a number of different new cool private routes, like a dashboard or a profile page, we can use the same system. And if we decide to eventually log back in, and the password is password, then when we log in, we're actually directed to the page we want. So now this route is protected, and if we log out again, we are redirected back out. Hey, you must be logged in to access that page. And so everything seems to be working as we want it to, which is great. That's what we're hoping for. And so now we're able to protect routes on the client side as well as on the server side, which is a much better user experience. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and commit our work. Git status, git add, git commit, protecting routes on the client side. And get ready for the next part.